My name is Wes, I'm 19 years old, and this is my 2006 Subaru WRX Limited.
I just wanna say, I just wanna say, I just wanna say, I just wanna say, you're pretty cool. I just wanna say, I just wanna say.
I've owned this car for a little less than a year now. So I've had this car and I've done quite a few things to it since I purchased it. I bought it a year ago and the car was literally an inch off the ground. And it was really cool, it looked awesome. I mean, it broke necks driving down the street because of how it looked and just everything about it. The car was awesome, I loved it, but I literally could not drive it. It couldn't sit where it is now because of my driveway. The angle was just too steep, it could not make it to this spot the way it was. So, couldn't get it here, couldn't get into my garage, so it had to sit out in the parking lot out front and just sit in the sun all day. So the car took a dramatic turn from there and I raised it, I got different coilovers, and I made it kind of like a typical Subaru, just black wheels, no camber, and I made it look more like a typical Subaru, added mud flaps and things like that. But I never really liked how it sat no matter what I did with those wheels, and without making it look ridiculous. I missed the stance look, which the car made me fall in love with in the beginning. The biggest difference between that and now in the stance aspect is the fact that this car is on bags versus being on coilovers. So, as the previous owner would say, he was lower static than I am bagged. Unfortunately, he's right. Regardless, I'm still working out that issue, but for now, I really do like how it sits. So, as the video states, this is an overview, so I'm going to be going over everything done to this car, some by the previous owner and some by me. So we're going to jump right into that with the performance side of things. The first thing is pretty much what everyone does to their car is a cold air intake. This is a SPC Performance cold air intake, and the previous owner had it painted purple. The next thing is the Turbo XS front mount intercooler. I really love how front mounts look. I actually almost went back to a top mount intercooler, but at the end of the day, I really like how it looks. That was also painted purple to match the intake. This is a performance thing and kind of a maintenance thing. It's better all around because the Subaru radiators tend to go. At least from what I've seen, this car had it happen. So this has a Mishimoto radiator, and I also had an issue with the upper coolant reservoir, so I replaced it with a Mishimoto upper coolant reservoir. It looks a lot better. Honestly, I feel like metal over plastic with heat seems to sit better with me, so I went ahead and did that as well. A lot of people argue if this is a performance part or not. This is just for me, and I wanted more turbo noises. I did install a Go Fast Bits blow-off valve. I have it set to about 50-50 recirculation and blow-off. I believe when I had it to 100% blow off, it would just blow off literally if you gave it any gas, and it would pop and bang and do all the cool things, but it would run super rich. So my fuel economy went down, and I don't really want the car running super rich to begin with. So overall, it really did make a difference turning it down to about 50%. Another thing with turbo noises and boost in general is an electronic boost controller. A lot of guys go with like Grim Speeds or Perrins. This is essentially the same thing. This is just the non-fancy version. So it is just a air controlling valve. I don't really know the proper term, but it was about $30 compared to the expensive Grim Speeds. And it is literally the same thing, just before it gets to Grim Speed, and they make it look all pretty and include the proper fittings and whatnot. Tuning is just so much easier, and it makes boost a lot more consistently versus the stock restrictor pill. And the last thing, which is probably one of the more noticeable things, is the exhaust. This car has a 3-inch straight pipe from the turbo back, so it is extremely loud. It does have Subaru rumble, but not in the typical way that you would expect, because the Subaru rumble comes from NVIDIA exhaust and Tomei exhaust and things like that. This rumble, a lot of people refer to it as kind of like a tractor. At least some of the people I know call it that. I personally love it, and I think I'm never going to change the exhaust setup. And at the very end of the exhaust, it has dual blast tips. So moving on to the interior of the car, this is something I've been recently kind of improving on. For a while, I literally didn't have any desire to touch the interior. I kind of thought, no one's gonna see it, you know, it's fine the way it is. But I finally started doing things to the interior, and I am so happy that I did, because it really makes a big difference, and I think it looks a lot better and it feels a lot better. One of the most noticeable things about the interior are the seats. They are Corbeau seats. I actually bought them off of a buddy of mine, and I'm very glad that he was nice enough to sell them to me, because I really, really love these seats. They aren't real leather, but they replicate leather, and I like that a lot, because I feel like leather starts to get hard and it'll crack if you're not maintaining it properly. And the seats that were in the car previously were leather, but they were kind of beat on, so I figured I would replace them with something that looks a lot better. And they have better bolsters, and everything about them is very comfortable. They also have the sliding ability, and they recline just like your normal seats, so they're not really limiting your comfort, or the fact that sometimes when you replace your stock seats, you lose a lot of features. The only feature that I technically lost was the heated seats, but the car doesn't get driven in the winter, so it doesn't really matter. Something that the previous owner installed before I got the car, is something I'm glad he did, was the NRG steering wheel with an NRG quick release hub. I really, really like the quick release steering wheels. I know they're stupid to a lot of people because there's no point, because this isn't really a race car, but I like it just for the aspect of the looks, and I like to, you know, take it off and be able to access anything on the dash. We just installed a gauge cluster in this car, and it made it so much easier because I just popped the steering wheel off and set it to the side. Speaking of the dash and the gauge cluster from Subaru, it did have the stock Impreza gauge cluster. It was the green. I really didn't like it because, for one, when you turned the ignition on, the needles would not sweep. They didn't do anything, in fact. They just waited until you started the car. And the green just wasn't really a color that I enjoyed. I thought it looked kind of bland. And I understand it's a WRX, not an STI, so, you know, it's not really supposed to be super crazy. So a lot of people do STI gauge cluster swaps. I think they're really cool, but they say STI on them, and this isn't an STI. I'm not trying to make it an STI. It is a WRX at the end of the day, and that's what it's always going to be. Something really cool that a good friend of mine found straight from Japan was the Japanese WRX cluster, I believe. And the cool thing about that is it's red, it sweeps, and it says Impreza on it, just like the stock cluster does. It doesn't say STI, it doesn't say anything crazy, it says Impreza, just like the stock cluster would say. So keeping it tried and true to the cars and its originality, I really like that little feature, and just it's little things like that that I really enjoy. I think it really adds a little bit of character to the car, because STI swaps are so easy. You just find a total STI and pull the cluster out of it and plop it in. But something from Japan, something really cool, kind of rare. The thing that also makes it really neat is it only reads in kilometers and Celsius. So my speed is in kilometers per hour, not miles per hour, and my temperature for, I believe, inside the cabin on the left side of the gauge is in Celsius. So gotta really catch up on those kind of things, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm speeding, but I'm really not. Along with the gauges, to the right and left of my gauge cluster is a glow shift boost gauge. Now, a lot of people don't like glow shift. I really think they're good for the money. I believe the $160 for an AEM boost gauge is a little ridiculous, because all it is vacuum. So the glow shift boost gauge has honestly never let me down. I have one in my Volkswagen just to monitor vacuum pressure and things like that, and I have it in this car. Never had a problem. It tells me my peak boost, it changes colors, it dims, it's tinted. It's nice. It works really, really well. And then to the left, I didn't cheap out. I did go ahead and get the AEM air to fuel ratio gauge. Awesome gauge. Everyone runs them. Couldn't recommend them more. Moving on to radio, I do have a JVC double DIN head unit. I really like it. The stock unit was just a single DIN. It was just very basic. So I went ahead and upgraded to a double DIN, touchscreen, Bluetooth, everything, just because I love listening to music and I always put it on no matter how long the car it is. So it works really well and looks a lot better in my opinion. And the last thing on the interior is the trunk setup. This is something I made a video on recently, and I'm so proud of it, even though it's very, very simple. The trunk setup is just hardwood with the silver tank that came with my bags, and the way I mounted the management system, I thought it was really neat. So very simple, but overall, I really do like it. And last but not least, because this is something I personally like the most about my car, is the external features. I'm all about looks, I'm all show, no go, to be honest with you. So very, very excited to go over this section because that's what I enjoy. So the most noticeable thing are my wheels. They would be the Wrx VSXX wheels. They're an 18x10 with a plus 38 offset. I do have spacers on the front. They are a 5mm spacer in the front, and in the rear I have a 15mm spacer. That way, as you can see, it has more camber in the rear. It brought the fitment in the rear to exactly how I want it. The fitment in the rear was probably about a ½ an inch off from fender to lip, and I could have probably just dropped it without the camber, but going back to how I purchased the car and how I loved how it looked, I really want to add more camber to this car. Next purchase is going to be spacers for the front and camber bolts, so that way I can match the camber in the front and the rear. I don't like mismatching camber, but it's not a crazy amount, so I really don't mind it that much. The other most noticeable modification of this car is the suspension. The suspension is an Airlift 3P system. That is the management system. I love the 3P system. I was going to get a V2, but for the little bit of extra money, I just went and got the 3P. I definitely would recommend it. The 3P system is incredible. The management system itself is awesome. The controller is easy to use. It has so many presets. It tells you the bag pressure, the tank pressure. It's personally my favorite thing. V2 is good if you don't want to spend the money, but personally, I'll spend the extra $100 or two to go ahead and grab the 3P. The car is also on Airlift struts. I know you can couple management systems and different brands of strut. I figured I would go over that. The struts are awesome. I've never had an issue with them. I'm hoping to make a video on a bag kind of update, to see how they're holding up after X amount of miles, X amount of time. I have to do all of that and figure that out for you guys. But I think it'll be a cool little video. So, two more of my favorite things that I love about this car. To start off, are the headlights are actually custom fabricated by a really close friend of mine. I'll put his Instagram and whatnot down either on the screen or in the description. Regardless, if you want headlight work, hit him up. His work is awesome, and there are companies like Circuit Demon who will charge you so much money, and their work is great. I think I'm not bashing their work, but for the amount of money you spend, I really don't think it's worth it. So I love my headlights. They went from super hazy and super gross to looking almost brand new with halos, with LEDs. Everything about it is so much better. Moving on to the rear of the car are the taillights. I believe they're pronounced Illumisthetic. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but regardless, they're awesome, awesome taillights. I honestly have never would have seen myself getting these. They aren't exactly cheap, and that's why they're kind of rare, but personally, I'm just still to this day, I can't believe I own them, and they're so cool. All LEDs, they have the E style on both taillights, the blinker, the reverse light. They are so cool. I really, really do love them, and I'm so glad I actually own them. And moving up front to the lip of the car, it is a Seabond carbon fiber front lip. This is something I really shouldn't have bought because it's a carbon fiber front lip. It's Seabond, it's expensive, and it's the first thing that scrapes every time. The other thing, and the thing that really bothers me, is the fact that I have a very nice, sleek, like glassy looking front lip. And then to the other thing are the side skirts. They are eBay side skirts, and the problem with the eBay side skirts is they don't match. Now, finding carbon fiber side skirts in that exact style that I have now, they're about $950. They're not even made by Seabond. I couldn't tell you the brand. I know I just looked them up once, but that's a lot of money for side skirts just to match the carbon fiber. So I'm looking into different options about like charge speeds and getting them paint matched. Seabond makes new side skirts, but they're not, they replace your OEM ones, so they don't really sit as low. I don't know. I kind of screwed myself, unfortunately, but I really, really do like how it looks. And in pictures, you don't really notice. So, guys, that's pretty much everything about this car. It's really turned into something I'm really happy with. Honestly, I had a little kind of dip in enjoyment with it. The reason being, I didn't drive it enough. It sat in the garage, it didn't really see much road, and I kind of lost interest. I've always had a thing for Volkswagens. I was like, I'm gonna sell this and get nicer, newer Volkswagen and do stuff to that. But at the end of the day, I am so happy I didn't, because just driving this car and enjoying it, that is what makes this car fun. It's nice to sit in the garage and be pretty, but driving it really just makes me happy, and I just really enjoy it at the end of the day. I've met so many people through this car. I'm in Goon Squad because of this car. I would have never even tried to get in or, met any of these guys if it wasn't for this car, and they are just like my best friends and my family over this car. It's pretty crazy to think that a vehicle can bring people together and introduce you to people you're gonna be friends with for such a long time. And that's just really cool to me. So this car will always have a special place in my heart. I just love the car. There's nothing else to say about it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this style of video. If you do, I'm actually thinking of maybe doing something like this with other people's cars. So it would be the same style, but a different car sitting here or in a different location or something like that. I think it'd be neat, you know, maybe do some more driving and different things like that. But at the end of the day, this was a first run, first trial. I think it's gonna be pretty sweet. So I hope it turned out pretty good. Also, if you guys didn't know, Goon Squad now has an online store. So unfortunately this shirt is sold out. I really like this shirt a lot and I wear it all the time. But we have like lanyards, koozies, pop sockets, there's like slap stickers. There's a lot of cool stuff on the website. The link will be in the description. If you could, you know, show some support for that, that'd be awesome. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Always. I think it's awesome just to have videos and post them. If people like them, they like them. If they don't, that sucks. If you guys could like the video and comment what you like about the car, what you don't like, what you'd want to see, what you'd want to see removed. I'm not going to remove it, but you know, I like to hear your opinions regardless. So as always, have an awesome day.